Hey, just so you know, Home Alone, something spooky happened. I'd be gone if a ghost came.
Every time you say spooky, I think my nephew is quite little, but he's been, when he was still first learning words, one of his earlier words was, "It's spooky."
It's spooky.
It's spooky. So he's
You're like, it's spooky.
Yeah, so every time I hear you say spooky, that's like what I hear in my head.
That's cute.
So it's a lot less scary when it's like a little guy just like kind of lisping at you. It's spooky.
Welcome to this week's Read This Next with Laura and Nicole. This week's topic is horror, specifically haunted houses, places. I think mine's a little more loose about house. But yeah, so that's our topic for this week because we're trying to get into spooky season.
Yes, into the Halloween spirit.
Because it's coming up and you don't want to read your books after Halloween. You're going to want to read Christmas books at that point. So mine will start now.
Oh, Christmas books. There's an upcoming theme.
Good one to look at. And we don't have a ton of highlights this week because Laura has a extensive reading list and we're just going to pull some recs and highlights from there. So our first highlight for the week, or unless you have something to add for the beginning of the episode.
I'll just say that there's lots of classic haunted house books that you might think of right away, right? Like there's The Shining and The Haunting of Hill House. But rather than go through all of those that people probably already know, I'm just going to include those on the show notes on the TBPL Off the Shelf blog. So if you are interested in hitting those classics of this type of book, you'll find that list there. But instead of going through all those ones people know about, we're going to jump right into ones that are perhaps a little less known or really more recent, because a lot of the classics are older ones anyway.
Absolutely. Okay, so our first highlight, I'll insert image here, is called White is for Witching by Helen O. Is her last name just an O, or does she?
No, that is Laura made a mistake. I will put the correct author name.
I was like, oh, what a neat last name. Just
No, that is Laura. Cut it off.
No worries. Okay, so it's by Helen. So, in a vast, mysterious house on the cliffs near Dover, the Silver family is reeling from the hole punched into its heart. Lily is gone, and her twins, Miranda and Elliot, and her husband, the gentle Luke, mourn her absence with unspoken intensity. All is not well with the house either, which creaks and grumbles and malignly. Is that how you say it? Malignly?
I'm not sure, because malignant, so it would be maligny.
That sounds weird.
It doesn't. Neither sounds good.
Maligny confuses visitors in its mazy rooms, forcing winter apples in the garden when branches should be bare. Generations of women inhabit its walls, and Miranda, with her new appetite for chalk and her keen sense for spirits, is more attuned to them than she is to her brother and father. She's leaving them slowly, slipping away from them. And when one dark night she vanishes entirely, the survivors are left to tell her story. Mary, I conjure you. This is a spine-tingling tale that has Gothic roots, but is an utterly modern with sensibility. Told by a quartet of crystalline voices, it is electrifying in its expression of myth and memory, loss and magic, fear and love. That sounds good. I feel like that was a really good, dramatic monologue that I did there.
It was a good dramatic monologue. I liked the part where both of us have a bigger vocabulary that we've read in print than we've ever said out loud.
Yes.
So sometimes you come across words that you know what they mean, but you've just never said them. I like that part. And then I liked how we breezed by the fact that she has an appetite for chalk.
Yeah, I'm definitely has pica, the one,
Yes,
I could get that checked out, might have an iron deficiency.
Yes, and that book has some lovely covers that Nicole will include, whichever one she thinks is the most lovely.
Yeah, maybe both, maybe all of them, who knows?
There's 3, and they're all good.
Ooh, then we'll separate times. There you go. I also liked you were saying the word, in English class in high school, I remember saying, tapestry, and everyone was like, ah, and I was like, what do you mean? It has an E in it. And they're like, it's tapestry. And I was like, okay, sorry. But this one has won the Somerset Maugham Award, the Shirley Jackson Award. It was a nominee for novel. It's won, oh no, and it was a nominee for the long list of the James Tiptree Jr. Award. Well, it sounds good.
Quite good. And that author is, I think that it was either her debut or one of her earlier books, but she's written more since then. And she just writes really great stuff. Interesting, unique, unusual. Yeah. So a ghost story that's from a different perspective.
Yeah, from the ghost.
From the ghost. Yeah, okay. So that's our highlight, our brief highlight section. Should I do a rec or two and then you do your rec?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's dig into them.
Okay. So I do read a lot of horror, first of all. Didn't used to, but it's come up now, horror. And even like I find that a lot of books that they're supposed to be like thrillers or suspense, when I read it, I'm like, this is really horrific. So it really is horror. But this particular book, it's not only is it a horror book, it is called Horror Store.
It looks like,
it is an amazing book. Okay, so the book itself, great. But as a physical object, look how cool this is. So it does look, it's made to look exactly like an IKEA catalog.
I love it.
Down to...
Oh, that's great.
Right? How fun is that? There's a map in the beginning. Basically, it's super fun. It really, it's set in a store that is obviously meant to be an IKEA store, but because of, copyright, it's not. It's called an Orsk Furniture Superstore. And it's told from the perspective of like a young man. I think he's like 20 something, and he works at the store. It's not like the career he wants to have for the rest of his life, but this is where he works. And something strange starts happening where the employees come in the morning and there's like broken bookshelves and smashed water goblets and just stuff, like the place is trashed. And sales are down, security cameras don't seem to reveal anything, and the store managers are panicking. And at first, I don't know if a couple of years back now, because this book is older, there was like a string of a couple of stories of people breaking into IKEAs at night and like having parties.
No, I didn't hear about that.
Or like sleeping overnight, or like a thing about like, oh, homeless people, they need somewhere to stay, and so they're staying in IKEAs. Like, so when this book starts at the beginning, they're speculating that something like that is going on, right? Like someone's messing with them. So 3 employees end up that they're going to find out what's going on. So they're going to work a 9-hour dusk till dawn shift, and they're going to solve what's happening once and for all. So they'll patrol the empty showroom floor and investigate strange sights and sounds. And then the description says they will also encounter horrors that defy the imagination. So like, we just really escalated things there. Yeah. So it's a very much like sort of a traditional haunted house story, but in a thoroughly contemporary setting. So if you've ever found an IKEA, you know how they have all those setups of like, here's what your bedroom could look like, here's what your kitchen could look like. And those do have a really weird energy because they're very liminal spaces already, right? Like it's not home, but it doesn't feel like a retail place because they've done this setup. Very creepy. It has this one really, this book, I wasn't expecting to really be scared by it, but there's some genuinely scary moments. There's one when one of our characters ends up trapped inside a wardrobe, and you can kind of like picture it in your mind, right? Those like big IKEA wardrobes, and she's trapped inside and she can't get out. And then she realizes like, oh, this is just like particle board, and then she kicks her way out.
That's great. She's like, ugh.
Right? She's like, oh, thank goodness this isn't like a, like an heirloom wardrobe from the past. This is just like kind of a, crummy, fairly cheap piece of
Yeah.
furniture, and she breaks out of it and escapes. That's kind of a funny moment.
Absolutely. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Have you
There's a
oh
great
sorry.
bit where they're in one of these um, set up looking little rooms, and they like hear someone behind them, and they turn and look, and someone goes through one of the like dummy doors on the wall,
Yeah.
which sounds like, oh, whatever. But when you're reading it, it's very creepy when you realize, and they go to check the door and like, oh no, it's one of those ones that it's just like the wallpaper basically. Yes, quite scary actually when it gets into it. Very haunted. There used to be something else where the store was built, something very different, a prison, and other things were happening there, and now they're happening in the store.
Another
Yeah,
place you
so
can't escape, just like prison.
just like prison, right? You get lost inside these places. Yeah, so lots of fun. I don't remember it being particularly gory, but like I said, I did find it quite scary, really. Yeah, that's Horror Store. And what a delightful piece of packaging. Like, super fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the video game? That it sounds very similar to the book you're describing. It's like you're working in IKEA and it's nighttime, and I think no, you're not working. You're a customer, and you've stayed after hours, and all of a sudden the staff members are like monsters and they're chasing you, and it's a video game.
I have not heard of it.
I'll insert the title of it below if I can find it, but the images of it are very creepy.
It sounds exactly like that book. Interesting.
Maybe it's based off it. They were like, ooh, this is a good idea.
Maybe. Okay, so there's that one. And now I'm going to go through a couple more, one that's maybe a bit more, well, no, not maybe, definitely a lot more traditional. And we have Horror Store in print, but this one we have via Cloud Library. And it's called The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell, or Purcell, not sure. And so this one is set at the classic setting. It's like an old manor house. And there's three different narratives. There's one that's taking place in the 1800s, one taking place in the 1600s, and then there's one that's taking place sort of directly after the events of the 1800s. So you're getting a little bit of, like, where it's going to end up, where this character is going to end up, but you don't know how she got there or how everything's going to play out. Very creepy. A lot of interesting pieces happening. A fair bit of that sort of like, are things happening, or is someone just kind of going mad? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, things are happening. There is some real evil here. Quite good. Very, if you like Gothic novels and sort of like, the family evil that ends up being passed down or visited on the family because of something they did centuries before. Yeah, it's the name of it, The Silent Companions. It's based on these, I don't know what to call them, giant knickknacks. I don't know. It was this thing that was popular in the 1600s and a while after, and I guess originated in Holland. And they were like life-size, painted on wood portraits.
Of people?
Of people. Okay. Possibly people sometimes, or people you don't know, whichever. And they would be made of wood, and they would be painted. So the idea was that they would startle you. Like if you saw them on firelight or whatever, you might think they were real.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a creepy, horrible thing to me. Like, why would you ever want that in your house?
Absolutely.
Why would you do that to yourself? But apparently it was quite trendy at the time. And in the 1600s, they end up buying a bunch of these, which then end up, they're still there in the 1800s when the other people go back. Yeah, and could there be something strange about them? Yes, there is. Yes, there is. Yeah, so it's a Victorian ghost story. Yeah, Gothic, unsettling, creeping fear where you're like, what's happening? And then you're like, everything's really scary. And it stays scary for a while. I did have like a point in time where I was like, I'm not going to read anymore tonight if I want to like have uninterrupted dreams.
There you go. So for those who really like the spooks,
yes,
good one.
Yes, but not gory. I would say there's Like the goriest thing is, I think, probably when a cow gets, so that's not pleasant. But other than that, there's sure there's a lot of deaths and stuff, but they mostly happen.
There's so much death.
There's a bunch of death, but it's not very vividly described or anything.
That's good.
Yes, quite good though. Quite good. Available on Cloud Library. Another good cover as well.
There's a person on my street. Well, I guess on the street I used to live on, and every time you'd walk by, they had like a Mr. Bean cutout, and they would put it in the windows, and it would always freak me out. And I think that was like the purpose, like it's funny, but you're like, who is looking at me? And then it's Mr. Bean. You're like, okay. I love it.
I mean, interesting.
Imagine a wood one of Mr. Bean.
A giant wood one with like they paint, the eyes so it looks like they're following you around the room.
No thanks. Hard pass.
Hard pass.
Hard pass.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you want me to talk about mine?
Sure, why not?
Okay, so I'm not a huge horror fan because I think like I played the Call of Duty zombie game and then I was dreaming about zombies, and it's not particularly scary, but anything will scare me, and then I have very vivid dreams about it.
Yeah, it's no good.
So I'm gonna recommend one that's for the babies out there. The horror babies. Just kidding. This one is it's called Everlost. It's the first one in the Skinjacker series by Neil Shusterman, and I know a lot of people love and read Neil Shusterman, but this one came out a really long time ago. I read it a really long time ago, and it's very good. Okay, so I'll just describe what happens in it, the brief description it has. Nick and Allie don't survive the car accident, but their souls don't exactly get where they're supposed to get either. Instead, they're caught halfway between life and death in a sort of limbo known as Everlost, a shadow of the living world filled with all things and places that no longer exist. It's a magical yet dangerous space where bands of lost children run wild, and anyone who stands in the same place too long sinks to the center of the earth. And then they find Mary, the self-proclaimed queen of lost kids. Nick feels like he's found a home, but Allie isn't satisfied spending her eternity between worlds. Against all warnings, Allie begins the criminal act of haunting, and ventures into dangerous territory where a monster called the McGill threatens all the souls of the Everlost. And it's really good. So it's like
the monster is called what?
The McGill.
I feel like that's not a real scary monster name.
No, but the way that everybody in Everlost is under 15, so they've got vivid imaginations, and the things that the McGill does are very scary for ghosts. So again, like the first one we mentioned, it's not from a perspective of the people who are being haunted. It's from multiple perspectives of people who are ghosts and are haunting other people. But it's really good, and it's like, so the one character, Nick, they both died in the same car accident at the same time, obviously, and he died eating a chocolate bar. So he has chocolate on himself, and he tries to get rid of it, but the more you think about what you looked like and you can only remember that he had chocolate on him, he starts getting like covered in more and more chocolate. Which sounds really silly, but like his body's disappearing.
Yes, that's not good. Also horrific.
Mm-hmm. And it's like everything that people love ends up in the Everlost. So people end up with like, there's dogs sometimes and like tennis balls and records and things. So it's kind of cool. It's got a really neat premise, but read it, and it's a series. So it's good. It's good.
Sounds good. It's an interesting sort of like a Lost Boys Neverland riff, eh?
Yeah.
Everlost, Neverland. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to dig into there.
Well, they never grow old, so
yeah.
There you go.
Sounds
but yeah, that's
good.
my rec.
Yeah.
Read it.
Okay, I'm going to maybe just hit two more quickly. So the first one is an Icelandic author. So we read it in translation, and we have it in hard copy, I think possibly Cloud Library as well. It's called I Remember You, and this one is a haunted house, in the house location. Three friends go to work renovating a rundown house. Sounds pretty typical, but they soon realize they're not as alone as they thought. Something wants them to leave, and it is not being pleasant or friendly about it. It just wants them out. And then there's a parallel narrative where a young doctor is investigating the suicide of an elderly woman and discovers that she was obsessed with his vanished son.
Oh.
And then when the two stories collide, the shocking truth becomes horribly clear. Shocking truth indeed. Lots of, this is one of the ones that's sort of like the occasionally banal evil of humans.
Were those the two same together you were describing? Like the people renovating and the detective?
Same book. The doctor. Yeah, same book.
Doctor. Oh, okay. So it's like 3 different storylines. Ooh.
Two.
Doctor.
There's the people renovating.
The doctor has the son.
Yes, and then the doctor who's investigating a suicide and has a vanished son.
I guess I immediately assumed doctor would not be investigating. I was like, detective.
It's like, well, he has a vested interest because he has a vanished child. So he's doing some investigating of his own. Yeah, horrifying thriller, says the description. The scariest novel yet from this author, which I would agree. Yrsa Sigurdardóttir. I just butchered that, but Icelandic, right?
It's comforting to know that it's not just names we butcher like malignly or malignantly. Like, it's just everything.
Words, names.
Like were you an English major?
Sure was. Master of Arts in English.
We're both terrible. Continue.
That's about it, really. Ghost story, very scary, horrifying, very good. If you read any of the Icelandic noir, if you were into that a couple years back, there's got some similarities, especially because it talks about the landscape of this like rundown place. Yeah, but it's quite good. Wanted to share that one. Yeah, I said I was done. I lied. One more, The Good House. By Tanera Dew. Very good. That's she is a Black American author, has a lot of like interesting cultural stories worked in. Main character is a woman who's a lawyer. She goes back to her family home where her son had committed suicide, hoping for answers, and there is unfortunately an invisible evil force. Bad news. That is unfortunate. I mean, it's called The Good House. You think the house would have an evil force, a good force? It doesn't.
She's not that lucky.
No, indeed. And that is definitely one I would say is gory. Just putting that out there.
So those who like spooky gorer? Oh my God.
Yeah, gore and horror.
Gore. Yeah, check that one out. But you know what? When you were saying that you were reading, the one was Japanese. It's interesting when anything that's in a different culture, because what they define as scary is so different from ours. Like, have you seen that Train to Busan?
I have. That is a zombie movie.
That's like it's totally different from the tropes and like what you expect of an American or Canadian zombie movie. It's 10 times as terrifying. And I didn't even my friend was watching it on
I was going to say, I'm surprised you were watching that.
This is not great, don't do this, but we were in a class and she was watching on her laptop and she had the subtitles on and I was just like watching her screen and she knew I was watching it. We're both just like, these zombies are terrifying. So yeah, any horror that's like not American has totally different tropes and you're not expecting them, and it's too much for me.
Well, if it's not too much for you, dear watcher, you have some reading suggestions.
Yeah, go check them out. And remember that we put, actually, one more thing. If you're looking for more YA stuff that's haunted locations or places or houses, we have a list on www.bbc.co.uk tvpl.ca/teensread.
That's
And
right.
I think it's just called, it's under topic, or no, genre, horror, and then haunted houses. And we updated it, so it should have a whole bunch of old stuff, some of the new stuff. And yeah, I think we covered everything.
I think so.
All right, then I'll just say catch us every Friday at 2 p.m. on YouTube and Facebook. And
we'll see you next time.
oh yeah, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.